The city lights flickered outside, casting long shadows into Aryan's dimly lit apartment. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in the monotony of his existence. Every day felt the same. Wake up, go to work, return home, and repeat. He had everything a person could ask for: a stable job, a decent apartment, and an orderly life. But something was missing. He felt hollow, as if his life lacked a deeper purpose. And then the dreams began. At first, they were fleeting images, flashes of a luminous world, golden trees swaying under a silver sky. Rivers flowed with glow that defied logic. But soon, they became more vivid. Every night, he would find himself standing in a vast, ethereal landscape. The air was thick with an unspoken magic, and the sky pulsed with a strange energy. A voice would call his name, soft and inviting, yet distant and elusive. Aryan, come forth. The voice stirred something deep within him, an emotion he couldn't name. He would wake up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. The dreams felt too real, almost like they were trying to tell him something. One night, as he closed his eyes, he felt an immediate pull, as if he was being transported. This time, the dream was unlike any other. He found himself standing on a bridge made of light, stretching endlessly in both directions. The voice spoke again, clearer than ever. You must seek the truth. Your life is more than just a cycle of survival. Who are you? Aryan called out, but the voice only echoed, fading into silence. Before he could take a step forward, he jolted awake, determined to understand what was happening. He began researching lucid dreams, metaphysical experiences, and ancient texts on dreams holding messages. He even consulted an old professor, Dr. Sun, known for his knowledge of the subconscious mind. This is no ordinary dream, Dr. Sun said, rubbing his chin. It's as if something or someone is trying to guide you. But towards what? Aryan asked, desperation seeping into his voice. That's for you to find out. The dreams continued, each time revealing more. One night, the voice told him to search within himself, to remember something he had forgotten. That night, he didn't just dream. He experienced a memory he didn't recognize. He was a child, standing before an old wooden door. He reached out to touch it, and suddenly, he was pulled back to the mystical world. This time, he saw a silhouette standing at the end of the glowing bridge. The figure raised a hand, and the dream ended. Aryan woke up gasping. He knew one thing. He had to find that door in real life. Days turned into weeks as he searched. He visited places from his childhood, trying to piece together the fragmented memories. Finally, in an abandoned house on the outskirts of the city, his late grandfather's home, he found it. The same wooden door from his dream stood before him, covered in dust and time's decay. Taking a deep breath, he pushed it open. A gust of energy surrounded him, and in the blink of an eye, he was no longer in the real world. He stood in the mystical land from his dreams. This time, the silhouette became clear. It was a woman, cloaked in celestial light. You have finally arrived, she said. Who are you? Aryan asked, his voice trembling. I am your guide, Ilara, and you are more than you believe yourself to be. What do you mean? This world is not just a dream. It is the truth of your soul, a forgotten reality. You were once a seeker of knowledge, a guardian of the bridge between worlds. But you lost your way, trapped in the mundane cycle of the physical world. Aryan felt a strange familiarity in her words, as if a veil was lifting from his consciousness. The voice in his dreams, it had always been hers. Ilara extended her hand. Come with me. It is time to remember who you truly are. The dusty air of the old bookstore carried an air of mystery, thick with the scent of aged parchment and forgotten stories. Aryan had always felt drawn to such places, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets only he could hear. He ran his fingers along the spines of countless books, pausing when his hand met an unfamiliar texture, an ancient leather-bound tome. Its cover worn with time, but its presence commanding. Curiosity ignited within him. He carefully pulled the book from its resting place and examined the intricate symbols etched onto the cover. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. A thrill of anticipation coursed through his veins as he turned the pages. The words were faded, their meaning obscure by time. But a single sentence stood out, written in an ink that seemed almost alive. Truth lies beyond the veil of the known. Seek, and you shall uncover your destiny. A chill ran down Aram's spine. He had always felt that the world held more than it revealed. His logical mind told him to dismiss this as mere coincidence, yet something deeper, something instinctual, told him otherwise. Just then, a voice disrupted his thoughts. You shouldn't be reading that. Aram turned sharply. An old man stood before him, his piercing gaze shadowed beneath the hood of a long, dark cloak. The man's presence was unnerving, yet his voice carried a weight of familiarity, as if he had known Aram for years. Who are you? Aram asked, gripping the book tightly. The man sighed, stepping closer. I am but a messenger. That book holds truths long buried, truths that could change your life forever. He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. But knowledge comes at a cost. Aram swallowed. His mind screamed at him to walk away, to return to the comfort of ignorance. But his heart, his very soul, demanded he stay. What kind of cost? The man smiled, but it was not one of comfort. That, my boy, is for you to decide. A heavy silence settled between them before the man gestured toward the book. You have two choices. Leave this place and forget you ever saw it, or take it with you and step onto a path for which there is no return. The weight of the decision pressed on Aram like an iron chain. He knew the safe option, the rational one, but something within him, an insatiable hunger for truth, refused to be ignored. Slowly, deliberately, he clutched the book and nodded. A knowing glint flashed in the old man's eyes. Then your journey begins. That night, under the dim glow of his desk lamp, Aram pored over the pages, trying to decipher the enigmatic script. Hours slipped away unnoticed until, suddenly, the words on the page began to shift, rearranging themselves into a language he could understand. The lost truth lies beyond the reach of the ordinary. Seek the keeper of shadows beneath the city's heart, where light dares not tread. His heart pounded. Was this real? A hidden truth buried beneath the city? Doubt clawed at him. Yet the thrill of the unknown propelled him forward. He had to find out. The old tunnels beneath the city were not on any map. Aram had pieced together their location from fragments of forgotten lore. As he descended into the underground labyrinth, the air grew thick with dampness, the distant echoes of dripping water, his only companion. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the stone walls, as if whispering warnings. Then a flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure, cloaked in darkness, stood at the end of the passage. You seek the truth, the figure said, their voice neither male nor female, but something in between, something ancient. But are you prepared for its weight? Aram steadied himself. I need to know. The figure nodded and stepped aside, revealing an archway adorned with the same symbols as the book. As Aram stepped through, his vision blurred, and suddenly he was somewhere else entirely. He stood in a vast chamber illuminated by an eerie golden glow. At the center, a pedestal held a single item, an obsidian mirror, its surface rippling like water. The Codex has chosen you, the figure said from behind him. Gaze into the mirror, and you will see the truth you seek. Aram hesitated. What if the truth was too much to bear? But it was too late to turn back now. Steeling himself, he peered into the mirror. At first, he saw nothing. Then, slowly, images formed. He saw the world as it truly was. Not the illusion of normalcy, but a place of hidden forces, of ancient beings who walked unseen among humanity, guiding, manipulating. He saw his own life, the invisible hand that had steered him toward this moment. And then he saw something even more terrifying, his future, splintered into countless possibilities. The weight of knowledge crashed over him like a tidal wave. He staggered back, gasping. The figure watched silently, waiting. This changes everything, Aram whispered. It always does. Days passed, but the world no longer looked the same. He could see beyond the veil now, the hidden truths woven into reality. He understood why the old man had warned him, why the figure in the tunnels had questioned his resolve. Knowledge was a burden, one that could never be cast aside. And yet, he did not regret his choice. For the first time in his life, he truly saw, and he would never stop seeking. Aram stood at the edge of a great abyss, though his feet still touched solid ground. His mind, however, was caught in a storm, tore between what he knew and what it just uncovered. The Codex had shown him the truth, but it was merely the first step. Now he felt it, the unseen world pressing against reality, whispering to him like an untamed wind. He closed his eyes. Breathe in, breathe out. His heartbeat slowed, and the world around him began to ripple. A low hum filled the air. When he opened his eyes again, everything had changed. He was no longer in the cold tunnels beneath the city. Instead, he stood in a vast expanse of shifting light and shadow. The sky above was a tapestry of moving constellations, glowing symbols weaving themselves in and out of the fabric of existence. The ground beneath his feet was neither solid nor air, but something in between, pulsing as if alive. He was inside the spiritual realm. A presence stirred behind him. Aram turned sharply, his breath catching as a figure emerged from the swirling energies. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Draped in flowing robes woven from silver threads, her eyes glowed like twin suns. A crown of light adorned her head, and her voice, when she spoke, echoed not just in the air but in his very soul. You have stepped beyond the veil, seeker. Aram swallowed, steadying himself. Who are you? I am Alara, keeper of the liminal path. The Codex has led you here, but it is your soul that has unlocked the way. Aram's mind raced. Then this place is real? The world beyond the physical. Alara's gaze softened. It has always been real. Humanity simply chooses not to see. She gestured, and the space around them shifted. Aram saw scenes unfold, glimpses of the real world overlaid with unseen forces. Wisps of emotion danced through the air, human fears taking shape as dark tendrils, while hope and love shimmered like golden waves. Beings moved between the layers, some benevolent, guiding lost souls, while others lurked in the shadows, feeding on sorrow and despair. You have lived in the physical world your whole life, Alara continued. But reality is far more than what the eye perceives. This realm exists within and around all things. Every emotion, every thought, every force unseen, this is where they take form. Aram felt a weight settle in his chest. The spiritual realm wasn't just an abstract idea. It was a living, breathing force that shaped existence itself. Why have I been brought here? Alara smiled, but there was gravity in her expression. Because you are meant to become more than what you were. You have glimpsed the truth, but now you must wield it. She raised a hand, and before him appeared a mirror-like pool of liquid light. Step through, and you will face yourself, the self you do not yet know. Doubt flickered in Aram's mind. What if he wasn't ready? What if what lay beyond was too much? But something inside him, something deeper than fear, urged him forward. With a deep breath, he stepped into the light. The world around him vanished, and in its place, he found himself in a void of swirling memories. Visions of his past flickered like fireflies, his childhood, his moments of doubt, his quiet dreams of a greater purpose. Then, the shadows began to twist, forming a shape, a mirror image of himself, yet darker, heavier. The reflection spoke, its voice laced with something venomous. You do not belong here. Aram clenched his fists. I do. The shadow smirked. Do you? You were content in ignorance. Safe. Why throw that away? Aram's chest tightened. The doubt, the fear, it wasn't just words. It was a part of him, the part that longed for comfort over truth. Because I need to know. The shadow tilted its head. Then face it. Darkness surged forward, wrapping around Aram like a living tide. He gasped, struggling as whispers filled his ears, his own voice, echoing his worst fears. You are not strong enough. You are not worthy. You are alone. No, Aram gritted his teeth. That's a lie. A golden light flared around him, breaking through the darkness. He felt something awaken deep within, a force he had never known, yet had always been a part of him. The darkness recoiled, hissing, before shattering into 1,000 fragments. When the world returned, he stood once more before Alara. She watched him with quiet pride. You have seen your own darkness, she said, and you have not let it define you. Aram took a steady breath. He felt lighter, yet stronger than before. What happens now? Ilara extended a hand, and in her palm, a small ember of golden light flickered. Now, you must learn to wield what is within you. The spiritual realm is not just a place. It is a force, and you are now a part of it. Aram reached out. As his fingers touched the light, warmth flooded through him. He could feel it, the connection to everything around him, the energy of the unseen, the pulse of reality itself. He was no longer just a seeker. He was becoming something more. As he returned to the physical world, the city no longer seemed the same. He could still feel the hum of the spiritual realm beneath the surface, the unseen forces weaving through existence. He had stepped beyond the veil, and there was no going back. And he did not want to. Aram had tasted the power of the unseen, the vastness of the spiritual realm. He had felt the pulse of energy that connected all things, had glimpsed truths hidden beyond mortal eyes. But power alone was not enough. Mastery required sacrifice, and the path he had chosen demanded a price he had not yet foreseen. For days, he had trained under Ilara's guidance, learning to harness the energy that coursed within him. But something lingered at the edges of his consciousness, a presence, dark and watching. The deeper he ventured into his newfound abilities, the stronger the sensation became, until one night it struck. The city was shrouded in an unnatural stillness. Aram stood atop an abandoned rooftop, the air around him heavy, electric. Below, the streets stretched like veins of a sleeping beast. But he knew better. Something stirred beneath the surface. Then a whisper. "You think you have grown." Aram turned sharply, his breath hitching. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It slithered into his mind like oil, thick and suffocating. "You think you are ready?" The shadows before him rippled, twisting into something tangible, something human-shaped yet grotesquely wrong. The figure stepped forward, its face half-shrouded, its presence suffocating. Aram's heart pounded. He recognized the shape, the silhouette of his own self, but darker, heavier, laced with something venomous. The voice that emerged was his own, yet distorted. "I know you," Aram whispered. The shadow smirked. "Of course you do. I am the part of you that you buried, the part you refused to acknowledge." It moved with unnatural grace, circling him. "Do you really believe you are free of your past? Do you think you are strong enough to walk this path?" Aram clenched his fists, the energy within him crackling, golden veins of light running along his skin. "I am stronger than I was." The shadow laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "Then why do you still fear me?" And with that, it struck. The first blow wasn't physical. It was something far worse. Aram's vision twisted, and suddenly, he wasn't standing on the rooftop anymore. He was somewhere else, somewhere familiar, his childhood home. The air was thick with the scent of ink and old books. A boy sat in the corner, scribbling furiously into a notebook. Himself, years younger, smaller, fragile in ways Aram had almost forgotten. Then the door slammed open. His father stood in the doorway, eyes dark with disappointment. "Useless," the man spat, "wasting time on things that will never matter." The boy flinched but said nothing. He merely shrank into himself, fingers tightening around the pages of his notebook. Aram's breath came in ragged gasps. He had buried this memory. He had told himself it no longer had power over him. And yet, here it was raw and consuming. The shadow leaned in, whispering. You still hear his voice, don't you? Every time you doubt yourself. Every time you wonder if you are enough. Aram tried to pull himself free, to remind himself that this wasn't real. But the weight of the past was suffocating. You pretend you have conquered your fears, the shadow continued, but they still own you. Pain lanced through Aram's chest. He fell to his knees, the golden energy flickering, unstable. The shadow loomed over him, triumphant. Give up, it said. You are not meant for this. A part of him wanted to. The battle was exhausting. The weight of the past, the pain of failure. It was so much easier to succumb, to let the darkness swallow him whole. For the first time since his journey began, Aram truly considered surrendering. But then a voice, distant but strong. Get up, the presence of warmth, of familiarity. He looked up to see Alara standing before him, her golden eyes unwavering. "You are not the boy in that memory anymore," she said. "You are more." Aram's chest tightened. The past was real, yes, but it did not have to define him. He gritted his teeth, pushing against the weight of despair. "You're wrong," he growled at the shadow. I do hear his voice. I do remember the doubt, but that does not mean I am weak. The golden energy surged again, stronger this time. "You are not my chains," he said. "You are my fuel." The shadow recoiled, its form shuddering. Cracks formed along its body, light spilling through like sunlight-piercing storm clouds. "No," it hissed. "You need me." Aram stood tall. "No, I don't." With a final surge of power, he reached forward, grasping the shadow's form, and shattered it into nothingness. The illusion broke. The rooftop reappeared beneath his feet, the night air cool against his skin. Alara stood beside him, her expression unreadable. He exhaled shakily, the weight in his chest lighter than it had been in years. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "The greatest battle is never with an enemy outside," she said. "It is always within." Aram nodded. He understood that now. He had fought the darkness before, but he had never truly confronted his own. Now he had, and he had won. But he knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. And for the first time, he was ready. Aram had conquered his fears. He had faced the darkness within and emerged stronger. But there was still a final step. The ultimate truth, the revelation that lay at the core of all things. The knowledge that could change not only his fate, but the fate of the entire world. For days, he had wandered the liminal space between the physical and spiritual realms, searching for the final piece of the puzzle. Alara had told him that the truth was not something given. It was something earned. And so, he had pushed himself beyond the limits of the known, beyond the barriers of the mind and soul. And now, standing at the precipice of existence itself, he was ready. The air shimmered around him, pulsing with energies unseen by the ordinary eye. Aram stood before an ancient gateway, an archway woven from threads of pure light. Beyond it, an ocean of stars stretched endlessly, shifting and flowing as if alive. He could hear whispers, not of fear or doubt, but of knowledge. The voices of those who had walked this path before him, those who had glimpsed the eternal truth. Alara stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "This is the final threshold," she said softly. "Once you cross it, there is no turning back." Aram swallowed hard. He had come too far to hesitate now. With steady resolve, he stepped forward and passed through the gateway. Light consumed him. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the liminal space. Instead, he stood in a vast expanse of shifting energies, colors beyond human comprehension, waves of golden fire spiraling into infinity. The very fabric of reality hummed around him, vibrating with an ancient resonance. And then a voice. "Welcome, seeker." A figure emerged from the swirling void, neither man nor woman, neither young nor old. They radiated a presence beyond time itself. Their eyes, endless pools of celestial light, bore into Aram's soul, unraveling every thread of his being. "Who are you?" Aram whispered. The figure smiled. "I am the keeper of truth, but that is only a name. What I am is beyond form, beyond definition. I am here because you are ready." Aram felt his pulse quicken. Ready for what? The keeper gestured, and the space around him shifted. Visions unfolded before him. Scenes of creation, of destruction, of civilizations rising and falling like waves upon the shore of eternity. And then he saw it. The truth. Everything was connected. Every soul, every star, every moment of joy and sorrow. They were all part of a vast, intricate tapestry. Energy flowed through all things, shaping and being shaped in return. The struggles of humanity were not mere chaos, but part of a greater design, one of transformation, of evolution. And at the center of it all was a force greater than anything Aram had ever imagined. "The universe is not about endless conflict," the keeper said. "It is about change, growth, becoming." Aram's breath caught in his throat. His entire life, he had seen the world as a battlefield, a struggle of light against darkness, of good against evil. But that was only a fraction of the truth. Light and darkness were not enemies. They were partners, dancing in an eternal cycle. Fear was not a prison, but a teacher. Pain was not punishment, but a forge. He saw himself, not as a warrior, not as a seeker, but as something more. A catalyst, a conduit for transformation. You were never meant to destroy the darkness, the keeper continued. You were meant to understand it, to embrace it, to guide it towards something greater. The revelation struck him like a tidal wave. Every battle he had fought, every moment of suffering, had been leading to this, not to conquer, but to transform. A new energy surged within him, not just light, but something deeper, an understanding that surpassed mere knowledge. It was oneness. Aryan stretched out his hands, and for the first time, he did not summon golden light to drive away the shadows. Instead, he embraced both. He allowed the darkness to weave with the light, to balance, to harmonize. The energy swirled around him, no longer in conflict, but in unity. And in that moment, he truly awakened. The keeper's voice echoed in his mind. You have seen the truth. Now what will you do with it? Aryan met their gaze, unshaken. I will share it. The keeper smiled. Then go. Change the world. The vision faded. The celestial expanse dissolved, and Aryan found himself once more standing before the ancient gateway. But everything felt different. Illyra watched him carefully. You have seen it, haven't you? He nodded. I understand now. A breeze stirred around them, carrying whispers of the unseen. The world was still the same, but he was not. He had walked through the fire, through the darkness, through the illusion of division, and he had emerged whole. Illyra placed a hand on his shoulder. Then your true journey begins. He looked up at the sky, no longer seeing just stars, but the endless weave of existence itself. For the first time, he did not feel alone. He was part of something infinite. With a deep breath, he turned back toward the world he had once known, and he stepped forward, not as a seeker, not as a warrior, but as a guide, a beacon for those still lost in the illusion of struggle, ready to show them the path to transformation. His world would never be the same again. Aryan had seen the truth. He had glimpsed the infinite weave of existence, understood the delicate balance between light and darkness. He was no longer the same man who had begun this journey. But now, the greatest test lay before him, a decision that would define not just his fate, but the fate of the world itself. The air was thick with tension as he stood atop the ruins of an ancient city. The final battle was here, not just a war of swords or magic, but of ideals, of souls. Across from him stood the one who had waited in the shadows all this time, Raziel, the keeper of the old order. You have come far, Aryan. Raziel's voice echoed through the void like battlefield. But you are still naive. Power is not meant for balance. It is meant for control. Aryan's fingers curled into fists. He could feel the energy within him, the culmination of everything he had learned, everything he had become. Control is an illusion, he said. True power is not in dominance. It is in transformation. Raziel smirked, his golden eyes burning with something ancient and twisted. Then let's see if transformation can withstand annihilation. With a flick of his wrist, darkness surged forward, jagged tendrils of shadow laced with the weight of forgotten nightmares. The air vibrated with raw power, the sky above cracking as if reality itself was breaking under the force of Raziel's will. But Aryan did not flinch. With a breath, he raised his hand, summoning not just light, but something greater, balance. His energy was neither pure radiance nor shadowed abyss. It was harmony. The moment the tendrils reached him, they shattered against an invisible force, dispersing like mist in the wind. Raziel's expression darkened. You refuse to choose a side? Aryan took a step forward. There are no sides. There is only unity. With that, he struck. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Every blow they exchanged was not just physical. It was a clash of ideologies, of belief systems forged in fire and centuries of struggle. Raziel wielded the ancient doctrine of dominance, a force built on fear, subjugation, and absolute power. Aryan fought with something new, something never before seen. Not the brute force of righteousness, but the flowing energy of transformation. His strikes did not seek to destroy. They sought to change, to break the cycle that had enslaved countless souls for generations. But Raziel was relentless. "You think you can rewrite the nature of existence," he roared, launching a barrage of black fire that tore through the remnants of the ancient city. "You think balance is anything but a coward's excuse?" Aram deflected the attack, his body surging with energy. Balance is not weakness. It is understanding. A shockwave sent them both hurtling backward. Aram landed on his feet, barely, his breath ragged. He could feel the strain, the temptation of the raw power within him. He could end this now. He could erase Raziel from existence with a single act of will. But that was not the way. This was the real battle, not against Raziel, but against himself. A voice whispered in his mind. You could take his place. You could be the ruler the world needs. You could reshape everything. For a moment, he saw it. Power beyond comprehension. A world sculpted by his will, free of suffering, free of pain. He could burn away all evil, erase all shadows, forge a new reality where only light remained. But then he saw the flaw. Without shadow, light had no meaning. Without struggle, growth was impossible. The world did not need a god. It needed a guide. Raziel struck again, but Aram did not counter. Instead, he opened his arms, allowing the attack to come. The black fire engulfed him, searing, screaming, but it did not consume him. Instead, he absorbed it, embraced it, not as an enemy, but as a part of himself. The darkness melted into the light, neither destroying nor being destroyed, but merging into something greater. Raziel stumbled back, eyes wide. No, that's impossible. Aram exhaled, his aura no longer separate from shadow or light. It was both. It was everything. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Raziel's chest. Your way is over. The age of control ends today. With a final pulse of energy, he released not destruction, but understanding. Raziel gasped as knowledge flooded into him. The same truth Aram had seen, the infinite cycle, the grand design of transformation. He felt his knees shaking, his once mighty power crumbling. Tears streamed down his face. I have been blind. Aram knelt beside him, offering his hand. Then see. The battle was over, not because one side had crushed the other, but because understanding had triumphed over ignorance. As the ruins settled, as the echoes of war faded, a new dawn broke across the horizon. The world was still the same, yet profoundly changed. The people would not remember this battle as a war, but as a moment when history shifted, when the chains of control were shattered by the force of enlightenment. Ilara appeared beside him, watching as Raziel knelt in quiet contemplation. You did not destroy him, she said softly. Aram nodded. That was never the goal. She smiled. Then you have truly won. He turned to the horizon, feeling the weight of his journey settle upon him. The road ahead was still long, still uncertain, but he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had chosen the right path, not as a conqueror, not as a god, but as a guide, walking with humanity toward a new future. And with that, Aram took his first step into the world he had helped to change. Aram stood at the threshold between two worlds. The battle was over. The path he had walked, the trials, the revelations, the choices, had all led to this moment. He was no longer the same man who had once feared the unknown, who had once struggled with the illusions of power and control. He had seen the truth, embraced the balance, and now he was ready to return. But the world he had left behind was no longer the same, just as he was no longer the same. The wind carried whispers of change as Aram stepped forward. The once ruined city had begun to rebuild itself, not through magic or divine intervention, but through the resilience of its people. The echoes of war had faded, replaced by the quiet determination of those who had survived. Ilara walked beside him, watching as men and women, young and old, moved through the streets, no longer burdened by the chains of fear. They see it now, she said, her voice laced with quiet pride. They understand. Aram nodded, because they were shown another way. For centuries, the world had known only the cycle of destruction and dominance. But now, that cycle had been broken, not through force, not through conquest, but through a shift in perspective, through awakening. But his journey was not yet complete. As he walked through the city, people stopped to look at him, some with awe, some with gratitude, but mostly with understanding. They had felt it the moment everything changed. A young girl approached him hesitantly, her small hands clutching a broken wooden toy. She looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "Are you the one who saved us?" Aram knelt before her, taking the toy gently from her hands. With a soft pulse of energy, he mended it, handing it back to her. "No," he said with a gentle smile. "You saved yourselves." She blinked, as if trying to comprehend his words, then smiled brightly and ran back to her family. Ilera watched the exchange, her gaze thoughtful. "You could be their ruler, you know. They would follow you." Aram exhaled slowly. "That is not my path." He had seen what power did to those who sought to wield it. Even with the purest of intentions, the desire to lead could quickly become the desire to control. That was the very cycle he had broken. He would not start it again. Instead, he would be something else. A guide, a light in the darkness. Not a master over others, but a reminder of what they were capable of becoming. The days turned to weeks, and the city flourished. Where once there had been despair, there was now hope. Where once there had been chains, there was now freedom. But Aram knew he could not stay. There were others, countless souls still lost, still trapped in the illusions of power and struggle. His journey was not to sit upon a throne, but to walk the endless roads, to seek out those still blind to the truth and show them the way. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, he stood atop the highest tower of the city. Ilera stood beside him, the wind tugging at her cloak. "So, where will you go?" she asked. Aram looked out over the world, feeling its pulse, its infinite possibilities. "Wherever I am needed." She studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then I will walk beside you." A small smile touched his lips, not as a follower, but as a friend. She returned his smile. "Always." As dawn broke, they set out once more. The road stretched endlessly before them, filled with unknown trials, unseen challenges. But Aram no longer feared the unknown. He welcomed it, because now he understood life was not about power or survival. It was about awakening. And as long as there were those still lost in the darkness, he would walk the path, not as a savior, not as a king, but as a guide. The journey had not ended. It had only just begun.